Hey everyone, it's Jennifer McGuire. You'll have to forgive me, I'm under the weather, so my voice is a little off, but I wanted to put together a quick video for you showing a fun technique of using heat embossing with embossing paste. This is so easy to do, and I'm using it with some of the new products from the Simon Says Stamp Valentine's release. So I'm using stencils, embossing paste, and some embossing powder, and also a great new greeting stamp set. The great thing about this technique that I'm going to show you here today is I actually did two cards very quickly, and they're done kind of together using the leftover powder from one card on the other card. So it's a great way to get two cards done in no time flat. So I've got some white cardstock. This is Nina white cardstock, and I'm just going to use a little sticky tape to hold it onto my craft sheet. I like to use embossing paste on craft sheet because you can scrape away the excess when you're done. Now I'm going to use a stencil, but I want to mask off an area where I can put my greeting after I've done the stenciling. So I've got all these hearts that cover this. This is the new Falling Heart stencil. I love it, but I want to mask off enough room to stamp one of these greetings from this new Blessed stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. I love these greetings. They're just beautiful. So I'm going to use a bit of sticky tape. It happens to be the right width. So I'm going to take this and put it underneath the stencil so that I mask off an area for the greeting. Now you could use a die cut circle or rectangle or something else here. The sticky tape just happens to work perfectly, and that'll mask it off. So now I've got my stencil. Again, this is the Falling Heart stencil. They have a die just like this, but this is nice to have the wide stencil for techniques such as this. So I'm going to take some tape, and I'm holding down all the edges. I like to hold the stencils down before using the embossing paste. I just find it easier. I'm using the Wendy Vecchi translucent embossing paste here. This stuff is great. You could use Dreamweavers too. It's just like it. And I've got a tool here where I use the back of the tool to scoop up some of the paste, and I'm just going to smear it around like you're icing a cake. Really, you don't want to put too much thought in this. Just go, I usually go in one direction and kind of move it around and make sure that it fills each of the holes. Now you could put this on thick if you wanted to have a really raised area, but with the details of these tiny little hearts, I want it to be smooth. So I'm putting it on thin, and you can see I'm scraping all the excess off and putting it back into the jar. So you end up using very little paste, and there's very little waste. You can see this tool really is handy to have. Any of the tools like this. It's just easier to do than a piece of cardstock. So you want to go ahead and close this up very quickly because it dries out fast. Clean off your tool and then dunk your stencil in water or go clean it in a sink. It comes right off, but you don't want it to dry on there. It makes a mess. So now I've removed the stencil. I'm going to use some tweezers here to remove that masking bit so that I can reveal the area where I'll stamp my greeting. And you'll see I have a couple partial hearts there that look kind of funky that were over that mask. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape that away and just rub that little bit of paste off. And then I'm going to use my embossing powder tool to kind of rub over those areas so they don't have any stick there. So when we put embossing powder on, the embossing powder won't stick on those areas. So now it's time to add the embossing powder to this paste. I use translucent. That's what I used. You could use white for this paste if you wanted to. Now I've got some Zing embossing powders here. I love the colors of these embossing powders. This is grapefruit. I've cut a little end off of a straw to kind of scoop just a tiny bit away that I can kind of brush over my embossing paste background. You'll see that I put it really solid along the top, but then I just sprinkled a little bit below it so that now when I come on with the orange color, I can overlap some. So it gives you a nice opportunity to blend from one color to the next by allowing just a thin little bit to come around down towards the bottom. You'll see I just have a little bit of the orange towards the bottom, and then I go in with the next color over top of that. It allows for blending. It ends up just beautiful. This is the butter color, and next I will do the leaf color, which is just a great vibrant green, and then I'll finish with the aqua. You'll see that by using the little bit of a straw, I'm able to control how much I put down, but I want to use the extra powder that I'm going to knock off of this. I don't want it to go to waste. Now I could have worked on another piece of cardstock to save all that's around the edges there on my craft sheet, but I didn't plan ahead very well. But I am going to save any of the embossing powder that's still on this piece. So I'm going to use that on another card. So this is the second card that I'm going to make. I'm going to skip to this part so that I can use this powder while the other bit dries. So from this piece, I'm going to carefully just lift it up and pour it onto another piece. But first I got to get that other piece ready. I have this Hero Arts Tiny Flags background stamp, which I've stamped with Versamark ink off to the side here. Sorry it's off to the side. I didn't want to move that stuff in the middle just yet. And I'm just going to stamp it with Versamark ink onto this white cardstock. You can see it's just that sticky background stamp on there now. So now I'm going to pick up this piece carefully, and I'm not going to allow these colors to mix too much. What I'll do is just lift it up and watch this. I'm just going to slightly tilt it right on over to the other piece, knocking off all the excess, and look at it, I have it all in rainbow order still on this other piece, and then I can just shake that off onto the sheet below it. Again, I could have tried to save that powder on the bottom, but now I have two cards done very quickly. This one with embossing paste and this one with just the basic Versamark ink underneath it. So I'll show you how to finish off this triangle card while this heart card dries. I find that if I wait for the embossing paste to dry, I get much better results. So I'll go back to that in a moment. So now I'm just going to heat set this one, and then I'll cut a piece out of this to put onto a card. Now this one I did with just ink. Now this will be much more smooth, kind of a one layer, not too much dimension to it. The embossing that I did on the embossing paste on the heart will have more dimension. That's the difference between using just ink under the embossing powder or using embossing paste. So I stamped a greeting on here, added a little green trim, and there we have a very quick and easy card with the leftover embossing paste. I also decided this needed a cute little heart here, so I'm just going to use a black pen to draw a heart in, and it just mimics the heart sets in the other card. Okay, so now that we have finished this card, just some basic embossing on this card, we're going to go back to the embossing paste and heat emboss card that we did before. I like to, again, let the embossing paste dry before I heat set the powder on top. I just think it gives better results for detailed images like this. If you want kind of a molten look, you could heat set it right away and it would kind of bubble on you. Both looks are great, but with these tiny little hearts, I think it's best to let the embossing paste dry first. And you can see by using the embossing paste, the heat embossing is actually raised a little bit more than if you just used ink. Okay, so now it's time to grab that Blessed stamp set. I just love this stamp set. And I'm going to stamp a greeting here with black ink, just right into that little area where we left open the embossing. Now that I've stamped the God Knows and Will Comfort You, there's another little line here that I thought would be fun to stamp underneath it. We are never alone. That's one of the things I like about the stamp set is you can kind of patch greetings together. Use one on the inside of the card, one on the outside of the card. Lots you can do to pull a card together and make it feel complete. Now this is the green apple Simon Says stamp cardstock that I'm going to use for a cardstock base. This is 100 pounds, so it's perfect for a cardstock base, and I'm just going to score and fold the card. Now I'm using a 3M foam tape to put this onto the card. Normally I use little foam dots, but for a piece like this where it's like a giant piece that I want raised on the front of a card, and I've done some heat embossing and there might be a little bit of warping to the paper, just a touch, I find it's better to put a lot of tape on the back. I rarely use this much tape, to be honest with you, but for some reason I kind of get carried away here. But this foam tape is quick and easy to do. It lasts for a long time, and look how fast the release paper comes off, much faster than all those little squares. So sometimes I like to reach for this giant foam roll tape for putting a little bit of dimension on my cards. So there you have it, very quick and easy, using embossing paste, stencils, and stamps all together on a card. And by the way, I cut a little bit off each side so that it fit on a card, and I can save these little heart strips for yet another card. So there you have a very quick and easy way to use embossing paste and embossing powders together, and also another card that you can use with your leftovers. If you're interested in any of the products, they're listed below in my YouTube description. If you like this video and you want to see more, I'd love it if you'd head to YouTube and give me a thumbs up. Also, if you want to see more information and see more pictures, head over to my blog at jennifermcguireinc.com. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.